What is happening, everybody? It is time for another MLB Live Before Lock. Myself and Eric Lindquist breaking down the night slate, two baseball slates today. We had the early one that Josh and Lofty broke down, the night one that Eric and I are breaking down. Tomorrow, NBA is back in our lives. And one thing that's cool about that, well, first, guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're sponsored by Vivid Picks today. They got a free square tomorrow. It is over under 0.5 points for Luka Doncic. So all you need over at Vivid is for Luka to score a single bucket tomorrow, and you're going to cash on that free square over at Vivid Picks. So take advantage of that. If you guys haven't checked out Vivid Picks yet, we haven't had them as a sponsor around here for a little while, so good chance you guys haven't heard about them. Sign up using the link that we have below in the description box on YouTube. Head on over to Vivid Picks, and you get a deposit bonus offer. You get that free square of Luka over 0.5 points, so take advantage of all of that. And then, of course, other things you guys should be doing, like I said, like and subscribe. If you got questions for us, leave them in the YouTube chat. Let us know in Discord. You could tag me. And if you're playing DFS today, play with the Stochastic Avatar. We got our revamped Hall of Fame program. So if you guys come in the top 3 of a GPP with at least 5,000 people, we've got better prizes for you guys. So play with the Stochastic Avatar. It is zero risk to you, but it has a little bit of upside. Free subscriptions, things along those lines, longer free subscriptions. Take advantage of it. Eric, what's going on with you today?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Just normal day. Nick Pivetta, one hitter. That was always wild to watch. He was my second highest owned pitcher. Also Atlanta, my second highest owned stack. Guess which lineups I focused on going into the evening or the afternoon, if you will. Looking forward to this one, though. Obviously, there's some pretty awesome pitching options relative to the first slate. I mean, I didn't really like any pitching. It was just jam Nola, jam Pivetta, but Cease, Gilbert, Skenes at the top. I have a pitcher that I'm in love with in the mid-range. Think there's some cheapies in like Estes and Tyon that actually look pretty decent as well. So I feel much better about this slate, even though the first slate going all right for me so far. How about you, Greg?
Yeah, so a little hard to say. I do have some pretty decent looking live lineups. I did stack the Rockies in single entry, which I don't know how it's been the case, but I've ended up stacking the Rockies a ton in single entry at Coors Field this year. And it's going fairly well so far today, the Rockies at single entry. They're up, what, 7-6 right now. They're also batting in the bottom of the 8th inning. So hoping that I could get, the like run, 2 runs out of the Rockies here. We got the top of the lineup coming up soon. And then I think I should be sitting pretty good for the early slate, but remains to be seen, especially because I know that the Mets offense is probably, I didn't look at what their ownership is, but I assume they're pretty popular on the early slate. And that game is only just starting right now because of the rain delay.
Yeah, 25% Lindor. I was in love with JD Martinez earlier today and forgot to end up playing a ton of him. Kind of ended up having that fall through the cracks a little bit. It's Tyrone Taylor that ended up as the guy who was a replacement. He's like sub 4%. I end up like just jamming a little bit more of him because I figured people weren't going to swap him out when Marte got scratched. And that was the case, but it is on to Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati's not on the slate.
Yeah, so we are going to start talking about some of the pitchers that we have on the slate, starting at the high end, although also want to shout out Chris Williams, who did drop into the YouTube chat and gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. So as always, Chris, thank you very much for supporting the channel. We do very much appreciate it. And you mentioned, Eric, that we have some pretty good looking high-end pitching options today. Now, the one caveat with that is, at least in DraftKings pricing, there are no pitchers that are priced above 10K. So we're not breaking the bank to pay for any pitching options. Let's group these 3 guys together. And this being Dylan Cease at $9,800, Logan Gilbert at $9,200, Paul Skenes at $8,800. The reason I want to group them together, it's not just that they are the 3 most expensive pitchers on the slate, but the reason I'm making the cutoff there is because these are also the 3 most popular pitchers on the slate. We've got Paul Skenes at 30% ownership, Logan Gilbert at 31% ownership, Dylan Cease at 37% ownership. There's not another pitcher on the slate that is more than 20% ownership. We've got some guys that are close, like Carlos Rodon at 19%, Braxton Garrett at 19%. But the real chalk is with the spend up options at pitcher. And the one that is really interesting to me is that Paul Skenes, the amount of confidence in Paul Skenes, the field is loading up on him against the Dodgers. I think this is the most exposure any pitcher's had against the Dodgers the entire season. But for yourself, Eric, between Cease, Gilbert, and Skenes, if you're just rostering one of them in a GPP today, which direction would you go?
Yeah, it's Dylan Cease against the Angels. He's the best of the grouping. He's been awesome this season. And then It's a matchup thing too. 23.6% K rate. Not that Oakland isn't a good matchup. It's phenomenal. George Kirby. Is Sean V here yet? I need to just destroy Sean V after 9 strikeouts from George Kirby. Oh, Eric, have you looked at his home road splits? Yeah, and I listed off for you all the difficult all the difficult road matchups he had. Just mowed through that one, so we can chalk that one up to Sean V being the GOAT and accentuating pitcher projections. But I definitely look at the Angels, 23.6% K rate, 88 WRC plus, as a really nice spot. Oakland actually performed better in terms of WRC plus against righties, 99. I still just think that the stuff of Dylan Cease has to win over.
I forgot one of the other really fun parts of the slate last night. Us sweating the weather in Chicago.
Oh, buddy.
The game ended up playing. You and I both had infinity exposure to the Chicago Cubs last night, and not a lot of exposure to Imanaga. So we actually did get, for what we played, the nut outcome. We got the rain delay in the middle of the game that got Imanaga removed from the game, but then we still got the offense to play and be kind of serviceable. They weren't the best offense on the slate.
Pinch hit wisdom kind of blanketed it.
But as far as the game script went, like it went as good as we could have wanted it to go for yesterday.
Correct. I mean, obviously, we would have preferred not pinch hitter Patrick Wisdom to come in for Bush and hit a there. But overall, Ian Happ had a really good day. He was my second highest owned batter. Christopher Morel went yard. He was my highest owned batter. So I can't complain too much. Ended up being slightly profitable. And Imanaga getting shelled before the rain. That was, was it? Yeah, it was right before the rain. That was very, very useful.
Yeah. And also, Imanaga, just terrible scoring decision. Imanaga should have more earned runs yesterday, but neither here nor there. It didn't end up mattering.
I was going to say that Christopher Morel to get an error for that play. I was watching that and I was like, fuck off. That's on Imanaga. But at the same time, it slowed his roll. The rain ended up coming in, knocking him out of the game. You didn't need him. You wanted George Kirby. And then, guys, Frankie Montas, Max Fried, I had plenty of, so I was fine with that.
It wasn't the error I had the issue with. It was because I thought that was fine. There was an error on Sam Morel or on Christian Morel. The issue that I had was that they didn't score an earned run off of or 2 earned runs off the double afterwards, where it was Lee hit a double into the corner. Like that was going to score everybody no matter where they were on the bases. But whatever. Today's slate. I asked you about which spend-up pitcher you liked the most. You said Dylan Cease. I totally agree with you. I have Cease in 45% of my lineups right now. So he's a pitcher that I'm really, really getting a whole bunch of. But I also want to ask you, what do you make of the other 2 pitchers? Logan Gilbert is pitching against Oakland. We've got Paul Skenes going up against the Dodgers. Between Cease, Gilbert, and Skenes, we've already said we like Skenes, or we like Cease 1. Between Gilbert and Skenes, do you have a second favorite option? And do you potentially not like either of the other 2 spend-ups?
Yeah, I think Paul Skenes is the best pitching prospect we've seen in a very, very, very long time. And yet, I think this ownership is a little bit asinine considering it's the Dodgers and considering Logan Gilbert gets the Oakland Athletics. And I threw it out there. Oakland, 99 WRC plus. They've been basically neutral against righties, but the 26.5% K rate is useful, friends. And I don't know what Paul Skenes' ceiling is here against the Dodgers. If he mowed down 10, 11, such is life. But like there's such a downside, such a stark downside relative to these other 2 who you want to call quote unquote safe. And if everybody's pulling the same amount of ownership, which is kind of the case, at least between Gilbert and Skenes, I guess he's pulling 37%. I have him in 54% of my lineups right now. But Logan Gilbert, I have in 38%. I have 4% Paul Skenes. Good luck to me.
So I have more of Skenes than you do. I don't have as much of the other 2 pitchers, though. So I am Cease 1, I'm Gilbert 2, Skenes 3. But that means I'm overweight to the field on Cease. I'm even with the field on Gilbert and slightly underweight to Paul Skenes. It's not like I'm entirely getting off of him. And the one thing that is really interesting about Skenes, even in this tough matchup, I'm wondering from watching him, Eric, could he potentially kind of be matchup proof? His stuff is so good when he's on. I'm kind of convinced here. You had mentioned that you think he might be the best pitching prospect we've ever seen. The only one that I think is comparable, at least in my lifetime, is Steven Strasburg. When he first got
That's what I was going to say.
He was just lighting the world on fire. And I think now Strasburg, people probably forget how good he was. He retired this year, and you know, the last few years were clearly not good for Steven Strasburg. He got paid a shit ton of money by the Nationals to just do absolutely fuck all and just collect a paycheck and sit at home while he was nursing injuries. But that early version of Steven Strasburg, like Paul Skenes is the closest thing that I think we've seen to that. And Skenes might even be a better version of that, especially if he ends up being somebody who's able to stay healthy. But yeah, I mean, I find it hard to just totally write off Paul Skenes because the stuff is so good. I'm very interested in watching this game. Like I said, I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Paul Skenes, but these are also my three most rostered pitchers, Eric. Cease, Gilbert, Skenes. These are the three pitchers I get the most of. Is there anybody else as we start to work our way down the price? And also, cash game, just play Cease and Gilbert in cash games. But as we work ourselves down the pitching pricing, I want to ask you, is there anybody else that you view as being a GPP target you want to have like comparable exposure to as to what you have of guys like Cease and Gilbert?
I want to finish one thing on Paul Skenes to just talk about how insane it is in terms of projecting him. Go to Steamer over on FanGraphs and take a look around. You got Duran, you got Jacob deGrom, who, again, isn't projected to pitch all that much here over the course of this season, of course. You've got Edwin Diaz, who is now out for the season. But overall, in terms of their projections coming into this season, those are the only three guys with lower FIPS than Paul Skenes is projected for from Steamer. That's insane. Like, that is absolutely insane as far as like what Paul Skenes has the capability of being. Now, they're a little bit more bullish on him than Zips, than the Bat is, but the Bat's actually pretty bullish, I would say, on Paul Skenes as well. The guy is absolutely incredible. And you talk about stuff, it's like he's had more 100+ mile per hour pitches than anybody in baseball since his call up, and more than the next three players combined. It's like Mason Miller and two other closers. It's insane what Paul Skenes is capable of doing. I will say I want to see some improvement to the slider, to the curveball. I don't know how they're going to end up playing out long-term. Right now, the slider getting hit up 244 expected batting average, 333 batting average against. The changeup, again, it's not like a primary pitch for him, but the four-seamer split, both of those pitches are just so stupid, it's not even real life. And yeah, I just wanted to finish off with that. I'm probably going to give him a little bit of a boost. I'm a huge Paul Skenes stan, but like for me, it's just the Dodgers. I'm going to play some Dodgers bats when we get to that section of it. And I was expecting that I was probably going to see like 7.5 minus 102 or something of that nature. This has gotten bet down so quickly, so fast at every book. This was 7.5 last night, almost 6.5 across universally right now. So Paul Skenes, I think other people are concerned about it too, but from a DFS perspective, it doesn't seem like anybody is.
Yeah, DFS, like I said, I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Paul Skenes. No real massive stand, but these are my three most rostered pitchers on the slate, the three most popular, and it's not all that hard to get up to them because, like we said before, Cease is $9,800, Gilbert's $9,200, Skenes is $8,800. You're not exactly breaking the bank for any of those guys. The only other pitchers we have on the slate that are picking up ownership, it's Carlos Rodon, 19% owned, Jamison Tyone, 15%, Braxton Garrett's 19%. And then we've got Joey Estes all the way at the bottom of the pricing at $6,400, project for 14% ownership in a pretty good matchup against the Seattle Mariners. Let's talk about the rest of the pitchers in the 8 and 7K range, though, Eric, where we have Braxton Garrett is 19% owned, like I said, and then we've also Jamison Tyone and Carlos Rodon, the other two pitchers who are picking up ownership. Of all the guys who are not Paul Skenes in the 8 and 7K range, is there anybody that you think is the best option to be getting to in tournaments?
Braxton Garrett by quite a considerable margin. So worked through it last night, and this morning just full-fledged laddered up Braxton Garrett up to 8 strikeouts. So 6, 7, 8, really focused in on those numbers. You can break it down different ways. If you have FanDuel, that's the best place to do it. But from a DFS perspective too, he's my third highest owned pitcher. So I have Cease, I have Gilbert, and then I have Braxton Garrett sitting there in 28% of my lineups. Only a 21.2% K rate, but he's only had 4 starts on the season, so don't get carried away with that. The other part not to get carried away with is his last start going up against the San Diego Padres. They do not strike out whatsoever. It is just a team that, you know, over the course of the last couple of years, just you knew routinely you're not going to have a great strikeout matchup. Only 2 strikeouts that really lowers what I think his projection is around the industry. 17.9% K rate against Southpaws do the San Diego Padres have. You know what the Tampa Bay Rays have? Nearly a 25% K rate, 5th highest rate here in baseball. And I think the stuff for Braxton Garrett looks just fine. And so for me, that was kind of the deal where, if we go back to 2023 and we look at him with like a full allotment here, 4 starts in, velocity is basically the exact same. Not that he's a velocity pitcher as it is. He's a guy who really emphasizes sinker, slider, changeup, and a lot of his off-speed offerings. But Braxton Garrett, I think we're going to see a lot of swing and miss from some of these guys in this Tampa Bay Rays lineup. And I did want to see, I mean, I bet it already, so it didn't really matter, but I wanted to at least get it in before we saw what that lineup ended up being. It rolled out about as well as I could have asked for. I'm pretty darn bullish on Braxton Garrett today.
And one other thing that I want to point out, and it is not Braxton Garrett for me. I have some exposure to Braxton Garrett, but right around even with the field, there's a different cheap pitcher that I'm liking for today. We do have our weather friend back in the chat today, Dale Chrisman, who's bringing up some of the weather concerns, which are true. There is a chance of rain in the Dodgers-Pittsburgh game, but not enough for me to be concerned about pitchers or hitters or anything like that. It's not like, the Cubs game yesterday, there was a rain delay in the middle of the game. Imanaga had to come out, wasn't able to return. They actually had to evacuate the bleachers at one point so all the fans could go
like
inside.
COVID again.
There's nothing like that. There's no weather concerns on the slate. They're going to alter any of my ownership or make me take pitchers out of the player pool or anything like that. As far as this pricing range goes, though, Eric, there's nobody I really love. Like I've got exposure to Braxton Garrett, but not really all that much different from the field. I am underweight to the field on Carlos Rodon. Are there any contrarian pitching options that you're liking this 8 or 7K range? Because the guy that I like, which I think a lot of people could probably figure out, the guy I like is in the 6K range, but 7 or 8K pitchers, anybody else you're liking?
Soriano has one of the better pitches in baseball. I don't completely hate the idea. Even against the Padres, it's one of those things where I just want to take some shots on a guy that I think has, again, it's just a splitter type pitch that really, really looks good and can fool a lot of different batters. He's one of the only guys who has a pitch that grades out that well, but I'm probably not going to have more than like 6-7% of him. So that doesn't really make sense as somebody that I'm advantageously for or anything. The guy is Joey Estes for both of us, right? 6,400. How do we not like him?
Yeah, and the reason to like Joey Estes has not all that much to do with Joey Estes, because
Nope,
I don't
it doesn't.
think Joey Estes is good. Actually, I think Joey Estes is probably bad. I don't think you think that Joey Estes is all that great either. His numbers this year, they're terrible. Joey Estes has, oh my God, I've got Fangraphs zoomed in super tight from, okay, we're good now.
That's always fun when that happens with your mouse.
Joey Estes for the year, he's only made 4 starts. It's not all that much data on him. So if we look at his overall career sample size, which is also not massive, 6 career starts for Joey Estes. He has a 6.46 ERA, a 5.13 FIP for his career. He only has a 20.1% strikeout rate, but he's a pitcher who is extremely cheap. He's the 3rd cheapest pitcher overall on DraftKings, and he's got a very favorable matchup. He's going up against the Seattle Mariners. He's at home against Oakland. He's not all that popular, 13% owned. So if I'm looking to save salary today, Joey Estes is just kind of the no-brainer option, considering the matchup, considering his price, limited ownership, and that he's at home.
Yep. There's nothing else that needs to be said. I guess the only thing is, 28.2% K rate against righties. Top in baseball for Seattle. I'll take a righty. Sounds great.
Yeah, so Joey Estes for me, if I'm looking to save salary. Are there any other punt options that you're taking shots on today?
Looking at my lineups here. Not logically. Chris Paddock, I have 1% of. James Paxton, I have 3% of. That's it right now. So again, it's not a spot to go cheap on any of these dudes where they're showing up in a considerable amount of lineups. I hope Albert Suarez pitches well. 7,100 for him. I'm not going to roster a ton of him when he has a 3.5K prop, but I'm hoping for run prevention. Baltimore, we've had a ton of closing line value. They're getting in at plus 116 last night. Now it's basically Baltimore on the other side of it. Minus number now sitting in front of them in some spots. Feel good about Baltimore as a stack. Feel good about Baltimore to potentially win the game against Berrios. But yeah, Jose Berrios, most people know on this show or on these shows that I'm not a big fan. Have 5% of him, so I'm half the field. Hope he pitches like shit.
We had a question in Discord. This one's from Hey, I'm Drew 95. He wants to know who it is that he should be looking at for DraftKings. He wants to know hitters primarily. My bad. So I just kind of glanced over the question, didn't see that you were asking us about hitters. So yeah, I mean, we could just jump ahead and do that. Do you have anything else you want to add about the pitchers for tonight?
Anybody facing the White Sox with a pulse as well. Jamison Tyon, 7,800. I'm about at the field on him. He's 15% of lineups. For people right now, I have 13.
Yeah, I've got 14 of him. So
Yep.
nobody that I have like a real crazy stand on. Just to recap for me at pitchers, I've got a lot of Dylan Cease and Logan Gilbert. I've got a chunk of Paul Skenes, slightly less than what the field has. And then Joey Estes is my favorite cheap pitcher. I don't have another pitcher under 8K and more than 15% of lineups. I got 15% of Rodon. I've got 14% of Tyone. I have 14% of Braxton Garrett. So it's like other guys too. It's like 4% of Soriano. I've got 3% of Zach Eflin. So it's just some guys that show up in the Sims, but no real priorities. None of these players that I have, like 2 Albert Suarez lineups, 1 Chris Paddock lineup, nothing that people who are only playing 1, 2, 3 lineups really have to concern themselves with. So cash game pitchers, we'll say Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert, pretty comfortable. That's the duo.
Yeah. Again, the Braxton Garrett thing is more tournaments, just jamming him there, betting him because the alternate numbers. But you look at Cease and Gilbert's projections, you look at Cease and Gilbert in terms of the K props, it is hard to get away from.
And then are there any hitters per Hey I'm Drew's question? And then after we answer this, we'll look at the FanDuel pitchers to see if anything's different. Then we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator, Jordan. Is there any hitters in particular you think for Hey I'm Drew's DK cash game that he really should be playing in cash games?
Let me pull that up here for you because I've got a couple for you that I'm pretty positive I would be rostering. I'm pretty positive I'm rostering a Seattle catcher, whether that is Garver or Cal Raleigh, one of the two of them. I'm quite comfortable in rostering anything that is a Cub in the outfield. And then Royce Lewis is definitely in play against Rodon. You have him facing a lefty. It's basically between him and Josh Rojas, but considering Rojas has second base eligibility, you're probably playing 3 or 4 Mariners. And then Royce Lewis, I'm going to be playing until the cows come home because he is back, baby.
Yeah, so I think for cash games, you want to be loading up on the Cubs. You had kind of echoed some of that with the outfielders here, Eric, but Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki, those are the 2 outfielders projected for the most ownership. Other guys, Chris Morel, he's projected to be, I believe, the most popular individual position player. And the like ownership gets kind of muted for individual position players, but somewhere around 15% for him. That does make him the most popular position player. So those guys, I would say Morel, Bellinger, Suzuki, all players you should be playing, in my opinion, in cash games there. Hey, I'm Drew. So let's go and look at the FanDuel pitchers now. And anything that looks different to you on FanDuel than it does on DraftKings, ownership's a little bit different. Cease is 27% owned, whereas Gilbert's 15%, Skenes is 13%. If you're rostering one pitcher in a FanDuel tournament, do you go to Cease, who's our most rostered guy on DraftKings, or do you look elsewhere?
Probably looking to Joey Estes for leverage. So we brought up Seattle as a potential spot where there's just cheap values on DraftKings. On FanDuel, because of the pricing, I think it's kind of fun to go to Joey Estes considering, you can kind of get whatever bats you want, period. End of story. I do like targeting Chris Paddock with some Yankees on FanDuel. Think they're a little bit easier to get to over there. If I'm playing one tournament lineup there, Joey Estes or Braxton Garrett are probably the 2. So it's a little bit different. Obviously, Cease and Gilbert are pulling a ton of ownership. And I've seen recently, just having started to sprinkle back into the FanDuel streets, we've seen some really pronounced ownership on some expensive guys. So for me, I'm probably looking at getting to Yankees bats along with like a Joey Estes or somebody cheap like that.
I am going to say Logan Gilbert. If you look at the pitcher ownership, I do like Cease a little bit more than Gilbert. On DraftKings, though, Cease is only a little bit more popular than Gilbert. On FanDuel, Cease is double the ownership of Gilbert. So that's the direction I would want to go. I think 14.9% ownership is a little bit too low on Gilbert, whereas the 27% on Cease is probably a little bit too high. For cash games on FanDuel, I would roll out Cease. But for tournaments, give me Logan Gilbert at comparable projection, but just half the ownership there. So Logan Gilbert is my preferred way to attack the FanDuel tournaments. And Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, start getting ready to pull up the lineup generator. We got a super chat here to answer from Corey Randall. Corey Randall says, why not go Albert Suarez and Estes to be different and then stack up the bats on DK? So a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't really like Albert Suarez for this slate, but the other point too, that is way more salary savings than you need at pitcher.
Correct. That's part of the deal is that look at the offenses. There's one that's really difficult in terms of price to get to. That is the Yankees. The Yankees, 8.4% top stack percentage. The only other team other than the Cubs with a 5 or more implied run total. So there are, I mean, you have the Dodgers too, but I think the Dodgers, we can agree against Paul Skenes. That's basically taking a risky stand. Paul Skenes is very, very good at throwing baseballs. The Dodgers are very, very good at hitting them. It's more than likely going to fall somewhere in the middle of them. I'm more likely to just say the Yankees is the priority for me on the expensive end. And I don't really need on DraftKings to get to Suarez, Estes. It's pretty easy to go Cease Estes, get to a number of these Yankees bats, and still find filler. So I'm not struggling with it the same way you are. I don't think you need the double punt today. And then Suarez only has a 3.5K prop. Like, I don't know why you would want to be looking at that and saying, oh, I expect him to go 6 with 6Ks. I mean, he's only had a number of starts. He's been a converted starter. I'm not in love with the idea of that.
Yeah, there was a point where it made sense to roster Albert Suarez, but it was not that $7,100 is an expensive price point, but it's a lot more expensive than the $4,000 salary he had first couple starts. Like that was just an asinine salary for a starting pitcher. I don't really have that much interest in playing him at $7,100, and he's not making his way into my lineup. So if I have, which I do, I have 150 lineups today. Of my top 150 lineups, Albert Suarez is in one of them. I'm not going to be not somebody who I'm going to want to be playing in single entry for today. Any final Suarez thoughts here for our super chat?
Nope, you did great.
All right, so let's look at the lineup generator. And if you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator or any other package at stokastic.com, sign up using the link that we have below. And then also don't forget about our Hall of Fame program. If you come in the top 3 of a GPP using the Stokastic avatar and you tweet at us at the Stokastic HOF Twitter account, you get yourself a free subscription of your choice. But let's go. What do you want to do, Eric? Balance lineups, contrarian. What direction should we go with this today?
I just want to say shout out to Sean. He's obviously showing growth. He just said I was wrong on him yesterday. Wow. I've never seen that before. How do we even continue on with this show, Greg?
No. Sean's a stand-up dude. He pretty regularly, oh boy, was that just a grand slam for Jonathan India in the top of the 9th?
Stop it.
Jonathan India, grand slam. Yeah, I've got it on my other screen over here.
I already had the over. I saw the Spencer Steer one came through. That was actually okay for me with one lineup, but I did not need Jonathan India to go yard. That is for sure.
Grand slam. No, Sean's stand-up dude. When Sean's wrong, he comes out. He says he's wrong.
He
comes out with his bold takes, but he'll tell you he's wrong when he's not correct.
What a guy. What a guy. Sean V showing out. Maybe Foreman's in the future.
Yeah. He's outspoken with his opinions, but he'll tell you when he's wrong. So anyway, what do we go balanced or contrarian here?
Well, yesterday you got mad at me about going to contrarian, and then everything just worked out the same way anyway. So do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. Go ahead.
All right. Pick it. So let's see. Let's just go balanced. There's no like real pronounced chalk on the slated offense. We got 2 teams that are double-digit owned. So let's just go balanced and see what we end up getting to. It looks exactly like yesterday. It's nothing but Cubs lineups. Nothing but the Cubs. Yeah, this looks very similar to yesterday, other than obviously Dylan Cease wasn't a pitcher on the slate yesterday. But our most rostered hitters, Bellinger, Swanson, Suzuki, Happ, Morel, Tauchman, Horner, Yan Gomes. We are just loading up on the Chicago Cubs. So stack exposures, Jordan, what is that, like 80% Cubs again or something like that? Yeah, 90, almost every lineup we had was a Cubs stack. If you look at our top stacks tool, going up against Eric Fetty, we have the Cubs with a 13% chance to be the top stack on the slate, 12.5% ownership. So like a little bit under-owned relative to our top stack odds. You also don't have to worry too much about the top value odds of offense for today relative to other slates, just because there are no uber expensive pitchers. But yeah, this does look like a spot where the Cubs are showing up a ton in the lineup generator. Eric, what are you going to be doing with the Cubs in large field tournaments? Because we have them with the overall highest top stack odds. They're expected to be popular, but not overly so. So where are you landing on the Cubs with your exposures?
I'm overweight to them. I currently have 28% Cubs exposure. So I'm okay with that. Obviously, we just got a super chat where he's getting 90% from the lineup generator. So what you want to do basically in those kind of situations is you have the saved lineups, delete a couple of them that potentially might not be the Cubs lineups you want to go for, and get, a strong portfolio there, or a stronger portfolio, more rounded portfolio there. But basically what the lineup generator is doing for like a 20 max is giving you more of an advantageous stand. And the Cubs are under-owned, I think, relative to their chances of being the top stack. 13.1% top stack percentage, ownership share 12.5%. But you look at some of the individual batters, and I think we're going to have some opportunities for some leverage still. They are basically in 20 max saying play more of them. And obviously, if you're going to be somebody that's doing this every single day, 20 lineups isn't a lot to be getting in a 20,000 person tournament or something like the $4. I guess it's 6,000 on the afternoon slate when you get these split slates like this. But at the same time, again, lineup generator is giving you 90% Cubs because they're the best team to get to right now.
Yeah, so the Thunder. Here's a couple of ways that you could change it. Number one, you could edit some of the lineups. For instance, Jordan, click on the down arrow there on the left. Yeah, so if you want to edit any of these lineups, you could use our player projections and ownership projections to change the lineups and build some line. You could hand build lineups within the lineup generator using our player projections and ownership projections. So you could alter some of the lineups that way. But here's the reality too. What the lineup generator is doing is he's using our projections, our ownership projections, our simulations, where it's taking a pool of lineups that we've pre-built. It's just identifying which ones are expected to be plus EV, and then it's giving you those lineups there. So if we're projecting the Cubs to be the team that's the best overall stack to be getting to, it's going to tell you to play the Cubs, and it's not going to tell you to just build stacks of lineups that it's not projecting to be profitable. So you could hand edit some of those, or if you want, you could go through your lineups when they're being built, and you could just discard some of the lineups that have Cubs and just only save some lineups that are non-Cubs. But yeah, it's our lineup generator really likes the Cubs today. So that's pretty much the reason why they're. So what was the other stacks that we're getting to? I mean, obviously nothing is all that meaningful in lineups outside of the Cubs. Actually a good amount of Mariners. We've got some White Sox there as well. Padres lineups. Are you surprised that the Mariners are popping up, especially considering how much our data does like Joey Estes?
Yeah, so they like Joey Estes. I'm literally looking at the exact point on the Sims tool right now, where I have Joey Estes in 25% of lineups now in my last run, and JP Crawford in 15%. So that's just one of those things in MLB DFS that happens more and more the more lineups you add. So today, earlier, played 150, had like a nearly 40% stand on Nick Pivetta, but also had like 24% Brave stacks. So it's like, it just happens. I don't know any way of quantifying it other than we get a strikeout pitcher and you also get a risky option. I'll also say the Sims love Shohei Ohtani as a one-off, and Paul Skenes still somebody that's showing up in a decent amount of stuff. So it happens. Don't read too much into it.
Yeah, I mean, I am overweight to the Mariners as a stack while also being overweight to Estes. So getting to both sides of it, like we had mentioned before, Joey Estes hasn't been good this year. And we've talked many times, while the Mariners are an offense that strikes out a ton, it's not like it's a dog shit offense. They're right around league average in terms of being an offense. There's power in it. So that is something to consider there as well. I don't think the Mariners are dead, even though we do like Joey Estes as a pitcher. It's a spot where I think there's upside on both sides. Makes sense to play both ends of it. Let's go back to the player exposures. I want to see what our other pitchers are looking like here. So Dylan Cease showing up the most. Carlos Rodon, surprisingly, in over 30% of lineups. We've got Paul Skenes in a chunk of lineups. There's your Braxton Garrett, Eric. He's in over 20%. I'm surprised not seeing any Logan Gilbert yet. Keep scrolling down.
I'm just glad our data likes Braxton Garrett. One of the lonely things about doing my job is like the night before, you're building out your own stuff and you're just so nervous where it's just like, I really hope that I'm aligned with everything come the morning before, because if I can be early to stuff, I'm going to help people make money long-term from a betting perspective. But from a DFS perspective, I'm so happy to see him in my lineups as well, because there's so many times lately where I've been like on under props for pitchers, and then I'm playing a ton of them in DFS, and it always just feels so weird, but it is what it is. The numbers are what they are.
And yeah, there was Logan Gilbert in
Yep.
15%. Anything else that stands out to you? If not, we'll build some FanDuel lineups.
Yeah, decent amount of Seattle Mariners bats. I like the Braxton Garrett play. Brought him up earlier for FanDuel purposes. I like him. Did we get any Joey Estes? Did we get any
Yeah,
Joey
yeah, yeah.
Estes pitching?
Joey Estes was in what was it, like 20-ish% of lineups, I
Yeah,
think.
so I'm playing 10
15%.
lineups on FanDuel because again, I'm just trying to track and pay more attention to it. I haven't played FanDuel in a while in any sport. I used to play every single site, like 5 or 6 sites every single day. But
I
now
used to
I'm getting
bully
so
you
much.
about it.
Yeah, I know you did, but also
And I was
now
right, by the way.
you were correct. It was a lot of work. But also the betting exposure that I get now, I think covers me in a lot of different ways where it's easier, more efficient to be able to get down money in a number of different ways where I don't need the same spread out, get every single DFS site in play and feel like I've got my bases covered. Now I just kind of want to be really, really good at the things I want to be really, really good at, like DK Pick 6, like Vivid Picks, like everything else that we have going. So I'm looking at places like FanDuel, where it's like, all right, I'm going to start dipping my toes back in. And Joey Estes and Braxton Garrett are my only 2 rostered pitchers in those 10 lineups.
Who's your favorite single entry stack today? And
Mm.
it's something that I was going to bring up as a talking point soon anyway. But Sean Jeezy also asked us in our Discord channel here. He wants to know what are we looking at for single entry today. First thing I want to say about single entry is I really like the Cubs in large field tournaments. I think they're going to be crazy popular in
Yep.
single entry. So I do want to go elsewhere and get off of Cub stacks for single entry. Is that also how you're looking at it? Do you still like the Cubs for single entry? If you're picking your one team to stack for a single entry lineup, which keep in mind, guys, single entry, different than just playing one lineup in a large field tournament because the ownership is a lot different. You get to see the chalk become a little bit more condensed. There's a couple of angles. Well, actually, one particular angle that I
I
like for
know
single
I'm
entry,
playing.
but I'm curious, what do you like for single entry?
I love the Yankees for single entry today. I'm jamming. I'm playing them in the main single entry stuff on DK. I love getting to them. I think Chris Paddock sucks. No, it's kind of funny because I feel like every pitcher that I hate on the Minnesota Twins have been on the slate the last couple days, and I get to just bash my own team. But Chris Paddock is a failed baseball pitcher. Now, he's found ways to have what a 4.57 ERA, which is better than last year's 5.40. So congratulations. Last year did have a 3.69 expected ERA, but all of one outing, so that doesn't count. 3.10 expected ERA in 2022, all of like 367 pitches. But I hate this stuff. He's giving up really hard contact. You know, it's the ball really hard and far. That would be the New York Yankees. Only a what 20.3% K rate. If you're not missing bats against the Yankees, not that Soto misses a lot of them, but Judge and Stanton sure do. I love getting to those top dudes. I think it's pretty easy to throw in a Rizzo or a Torres or an Austin Wells and make it pretty seamless to get to those main Yankees guys.
So a couple things to break down. First off, we've got only 2 teams as stacks that are projected for double-digit ownership today. And I think something else that's interesting about Joey Estes is the Mariners are expected to be very chalky today. This is the second most popular offense on the slate. You're getting leverage by playing Joey Estes at offense. In single entry, I think the field is primarily going to be stacking 2 teams. That is the Chicago Cubs, the Seattle Mariners. So I like playing Joey Estes in single entry because I think you're going to be getting some leverage off of the Mariners. I know oftentimes we're looking to stack offenses going up against chalk pitchers that I think are a little bit iffy for for a single entry tournament purposes. But I don't really want to stack against Paul Skenes. I don't want to stack against Logan Gilbert. I don't want to stack against Dylan Cease tonight. So instead, the way that I'm getting leverage is I want to play Joey Estes in single entry. So if I'm playing Joey Estes in single entry, I'm clearly not playing the Mariners. I don't want to play the Cubs because I think they're going to be really popular. And then there's a couple of teams I'm narrowing it down to, one of them being the New York Yankees, who you had just brought up, Eric. But the direction I'm leaning towards right now is the San Diego Padres against Jose Soriano. And Soriano is a pitcher who has been really popular on individual slates this year because he is somebody who's shown the ability to rack up strikeouts. He's also been really cheap in some favorable matchups, but he's also not a pitcher that I'm all that sold on. His minor league numbers have generally been pretty weak when he's pitched in the minor leagues. His projections for this year aren't all that favorable. And then also he's expected to be splitting time between a starter and reliever and still doesn't have the most favorable projections for the year. And I like the Padres offense. So Padres, I think, are one of the teams that are not going to be all that popular in single entry, with the ownership gravitating more towards the Yankees and gravitating more towards the going towards the Cubs and the Mariners. So I'm going to be playing the Padres in single entry tonight, Eric.
I don't completely hate it. It's not a team that I have a ton of right now. I'm not in love with it. Again, I brought up Soriano earlier. The knuckle curve is one of the better pitches. Not just, I'll throw it out there. It's one of the better pitches in baseball. 39.3% whiff percentage, 173 expected batting average, and he throws it a ton. So that's cool. 30.3% usage. It was basically, he was a one-trick pony last season. 41.2% knuckle curve usage. Had decent enough stuff. Only a 4.04 expected ERA, but he's been a little bit better here as a starter. Feel as though the sinker, I don't know why this became a pitch that he's throwing a ton, other than it induces a lot of ground balls. Last season, it wasn't even a pitch he really had. And then coming into this year, that's just like his main offering now. But the knuckle curve is what you really want to feature with him. I think there is risk reward with a guy like this. He's limited the walks to 1.22 whip over the course of this season, 10.2% walk rate. It sounds high, but like, if you're going to generate some more swing and miss, which I think we have room for the 22% K rate to grow, I'm with you. But like San Diego, as much as they piss me off from time to time from a betting perspective, there's no doubt some of those main boppers, Luis Arraez from Contact, it's a really good lineup still. They're going to get Xander Bogaerts soon. It's going to be a fully operational Death Star sooner rather than later.
Now let's build some lineups for FanDuel, and then we'll see if there's any contrarian stacks we're liking today, Eric, and then we'll do our home run picks before we wrap it up. We've only got 10 minutes to go until lock now. Time's been going fast. Oh, Jordan, you already built the lineups out for
Look at this guy.
FanDuel lineups, Jordan.
Look at this guy.
Operating in stealth. I didn't even notice him do that.
Operator.
Like a ninja, like his ancestors. So we're looking at the hitters here that we have the most exposure to, and it's Cody Bellinger, Nico Horner, Mike Tauchman. Listen, he's going to do his home run pick, and he's going to pay homage later. Seiya Suzuki, who Jordan's also highlighting right there. Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson. So lots of Cubs showing up here on FanDuel, just as they were on DraftKings. Does that surprise you at all, Eric? Anything surprising you?
You're surprising me. I don't know. Sure. Let me see. Let me look at this screen.
It's a lot of Cubs. Dylan Cease, the pitcher we're getting the most exposure to.
So Jordan, he's Thai. Like, what? Where did that come from?
What do you mean?
What? Oh, I heard that, Craig. Everybody heard it, Andre. Yeah, Cubs look good. Go ahead. Roster a lot of Cubs in large field. That's cool.
Yeah, lots of Cubs here. As far as pitchers, we got Dylan Cease, Joey, even on FanDuel, Joey Estes showing up in about 20% of lineups, Braxton Garrett in close to 20. So there are some cheaper pitchers we're getting to on FanDuel, but also just like over on DraftKings, not really seeing a lot of Logan Gilbert showing up in lineups. Go to the stack exposures, Jordan. Yeah, I mean, just a shit ton of Cubs. It's exactly the same as we had on DraftKings. 90% of the Cubs. We got a bunch of Mariners here, a lot of Texas Rangers. Are there any contrarian offenses that you are seeing that stand out on FanDuel, Eric? Because it's just like on DraftKings, a couple of teams that are picking up the bulk of the ownership. We've got actually 15% going to the Cubs over on FanDuel, 8% going to the Mariners. Any teams you're liking on FanDuel outside of the Cubs and Mariners? Because, I mean, that's like a quarter of the field's lineups.
Yeah, it should be a quarter of the field's lineups. I get it. I think the Yankees look awesome on FanDuel today. It's mainly the main reason I wanted to play Estes and get to him in some of those lineups. Dodgers, they're really low owned on FanDuel. Everybody's going to go up to the 10+ K guys. I think that's kind of the fun part of about playing DK today, is I can kind of mix in more of those Yankees and it's not as cost prohibitive. But yeah, Cease and Gilbert make it pretty tough to get to some of those other pieces. Did Luis Torrens just hit another home run? Are you joking me? Are you joking me? The only Met I didn't play. Are you kidding me?
Let's see. He is, yep. He went back-to-back with Lindor.
Did Lindor just go yard too?
They went back-to-back. Lindor homered and
good.
Torrens. Yeah, Torrens has 2 homers today. That's all of it's like all the Mets runs. A homer by Lindor and then 2 homers by Torrens.
Cool. That makes me very happy. I'm so happy that the 25% on Lindor people got there. Yay, congratulations to them.
Yeah, I don't know what my Lindor ownership is to know if I'm happy about it or not. I
I'm
don't
not.
think I had very much of Torrens either, but I'd have to check
I
after
didn't
this.
either.
As far as FanDuel is concerned, for me, I like the Cubs a little bit less on I mean, they're 15% owned. It's so much ownership to an individual team. I wouldn't be playing them single entry. Other teams that I do think would potentially be making sense over on FanDuel. I do think the Pittsburgh Pirates are an interesting contrarian stack today. James Paxton has been absolutely awful this season. So that's a team that I would like a little bit over on FanDuel. But in general, Eric, we've talked about the Cubs. We've talked about the Mariners. You talked about the Yankees being a team that you like at low ownership and single entry. Are there any teams that are low only, like either for leverage purposes or just because you think they should be higher owned?
The Pittsburgh Pirates up against James Paxton, because that seems like fun, right? James Paxton not having the best year himself, just throwing it out there. Not that that should be surprising to anybody, but James Paxton, I did bet his over on 3.5 strikeouts, so I'm hoping he can pull that off at least. But this is a very interesting situation with some of these righties. We have a 5.24 expected ERA for James Paxton, a 5.39 xFIP. He is awful. He is no good. He is trash. I don't know what else to say besides that. Pittsburgh, not my favorite offense. There is a ton of strikeout upside for Southpaws in these kind of spots, 25.8% K rate, but they have a 159 ISO against Southpaws as well. So there's enough righty power there where I'm getting to like 2-3 mans there of a number of these Pirates bats. Connor Joe, a guy I'm getting to quite a bit at first base.
Let's see. Contrarian stacks for myself. So here is one that, let me refresh our stack ownership to see where it's at right now. Want to make sure that nothing has changed here. All right. So actually, the Cubs have gotten to be even more more popular as the show has gone on here. The Detroit Tigers, they're also picking up some ownership, but I think the Tigers should be even more popular against Jose Urena. I love stacking against Jose Urena whenever he pitches. So we got 8% ownership going to the Tigers. That's, some amount, but it's not anything crazy. Urena's dog shit, though. And he's been pitching at the big league level and been terrible for years now. The last time we saw Jose Urena have an entire season with a sub-4 ERA was 2018. This is kind of like a similar rant to what I went on when I was stacking against Urena in his last start. But the guy's been so bad for so long, and it seems like every year, 1-2 teams are trying to take a chance on him, thinking that they're going to be the team that's able to turn around Jose Urena, and nobody ever does it. The guy is terrible. He shouldn't be pitching at the big leagues anymore. And I mean, last year he had a 6.45 ERA, 5.77 expected ERA. Year before, I mean, he's had an ERA over 5 every year since 2019. I like the idea of stacking against Urena. It doesn't have much to do against the Tigers offense, just that I don't think Urena can get out big league hitters no matter who they are.
I completely agree with that. I bet the over of that game as well. Yeah, I'm just so tilted by this Lindor thing. I had some good lineups. Whatever. Is what it is.
Any other, what's the lowest owned offense that you're getting to before we do our home run pick and wrap up?
Let me pull this up here. I'm just copying over the last run here. I have my lowest owned stack that I'm getting to. I mean, I'm getting to a lot of these guys. On the bottom end here, I had 0% White Sox there a second ago. I do have some Luis Robert, but that's about it. Let's see, the lowest owned stack I'm getting to. I have 2 shares of Miami. I have 4 shares of Oakland. That has more to do with just leverage on a popular pitcher. I have 4% Toronto against Suarez. Looking through this, don't really have a lot of Texas against Maeda. I mean, everything you just said about Urania, Maeda's been pretty awful too. And that kind of freaks me out because they have the second best top value that we have on the entire board in the top stacks tool. But my Minnesota Twins, I have a little bit of them. I would say they're not the lowest owned. Lowest owned I have is the Oakland Athletics in 4 shares.
Yeah, so for me, I mentioned it before, the Pittsburgh Pirates going up against James Paxton. Paxton this year has a 3.29 ERA, but a 5.24 expected ERA, a 5.36 FIP. He has a 14.2% strikeout rate, a 12.8% walk rate. Paxton has been awful this year. It's masked by a lot of good luck, leading to a low ERA. I have been stacking against him pretty heavily in recent starts. Pirates, very low owned team, 5% owned. I like being overweight to them. This is a pitcher in James Paxton, who I don't think is going to be up in the big leagues for very much longer. Either he's dealing with an injury that's undisclosed, or he's just going to end up losing a roster spot due to ineffectiveness. So I like stacking against James Paxton before the regression ends up coming and hitting him. Home run pick, Eric. Who's the dong of the day? Who are you picking to go yard? And also YouTube chat. Throw in your home run picks. We'll read some of them off.
Well, no Coors Field, so I can't get you mad at me.
Yep.
Let's think of the wildest one that I have on the board. I'm pulling up my stuff here. I'll go Jake Cronenworth. He always pops for me. I said I don't have a lot of the Padres as a stack, but I have quite a bit of Jake Cronenworth, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis I normally do.
All right, which hitter do I want to go with here? I do have 19% of a Luis Robert. I'm going to go with Luis Robert. I think people forget how good of a power hitter Robert is because of the fact that he's buried on this terrible White Sox team and he's been dealing with some injuries here. But Luis Robert, that's my home run pick for today. From chat, Sotek's going with Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Swaggy Pete's got Gunnar Henderson. William Westry has got Corey Seager. Charles Moran is going with Gunnar Henderson. Junior Whopper, he's riding with me. He's got Luis Robert as well. Caleb Garink has got Nate Lowe. Jacob Dunn is going with Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani's only got like one home run in the last month. So it'll be interesting to see if he could get off the schneid here. Andy Millman's got Ryan Mountcastle. Kareem Livingston has got Brian De La Cruz. We got Mike Yokastic in the chat. He says that he is going to go with Jake Rogers off Turd Tosser. And then Doug Dobbs has got Ian Happ. Alex Serra's going with your guy, Royce Lewis, today there, Eric. Casey Leatherwood's got Jerickson Profar and Ty France. Jordan Klein staying on brand, going with Shohei Ohtani. And then we've also got Mike Campbell's with Shea Langoliers. And then I see a folk mat there is going with Rojas for today. So guys, we're at lock. Thank you very much for watching. If you've not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out our best ball package if you haven't already. It is totally free. If you guys are doing some best ball drafts and want projections, head on over to Stokastic, make a free account, and you get totally free best ball projections. Kajeski's been putting a lot of time into them. I think it's a great product, so go check that out. Guys, tomorrow we got basketball back, so we'll be doing baseball shows. We'll be doing basketball. Josh and I'll be doing a watch-along, so come check that out tomorrow night, and then on playback for the watch-along. Have a good night. Good luck with your lineups. See you back here tomorrow.